Cinderella. Not every girl with cinders on her cheeks is waiting for a magic coach. Sometimes she faces giants, storms, and shadows, and finds her way out on her own. Once upon a time, in an age of gold and glory, there lived a king who possessed everything a man could ever desire. He ruled vast lands, his vaults overflowed with treasure, but his greatest jewel was his beautiful wife, with whom he had 3 lovely daughters. The youngest, however, outshone her sisters not just in beauty, but in wisdom far beyond her years. But happiness is often as brittle as glass. The queen died, leaving a hole in the king's heart that no gold could fill. In his grief and against the warnings of his daughters, he married again. His new wife was a woman of stone, unyielding, wrathful, and full of scorn. She whispered poison in the king's ear, dragging him into a foolish war that cost him his crown, his lands, and his riches. The once mighty king was left with nothing. A merciful neighboring prince took pity on him. He sent the fallen king deep into the endless wild mountains to serve as a humble gamekeeper. And so the king roamed the deep woods, often staying away for days, hunting to forget what he had lost. But for his daughters, the cottage became a prison. The stepmother hated them for their beauty and their royal blood. She beat them, starved them, and plotted day and night to be rid of them. One evening, when the father returned, she hissed at him.
"I will not suffer these useless, proud girls in my house another day. They eat my food and do nothing. Take them away. Lose them in the woods."
"Woman, are you mad?"
The father pleaded.
"There is nothing out there but wolves and wilderness. They would die."
Exactly.
She smiled coldly.
Take them so far they can never find their way back. If you don't, I will drive them out myself, and it will be far worse for them.
Broken and weak-willed, the father agreed. But the youngest daughter, sharp-eared and clever, heard every wicked word. She ran to her sisters, and together they hatched a plan.
"Listen,"
the youngest whispered.
"we have balls of yarn. We will each take one, tie them together, and unspool them as we walk. The thread will lead us home."
The next morning, the father forced a smile, though his eyes were full of tears.
"Come, my children. We are going deep into the forest today. Pack some food. We might not be back by nightfall."
The stepmother watched them go with a triumphant sneer. They walked for hours. The father led the way, while the girls secretly unspooled their thread, leaving a thin trail behind them. When they reached a dark, unfamiliar part of the woods, the father stopped under a giant oak.
"Rest now, my dears,"
he said, his voice trembling.
"Sleep a while. I will keep watch."
The girls pretended to sleep. The father, overcome with shame, blessed them silently and slipped away, leaving them alone in the creeping shadows. When they woke, the forest was silent. They called for him, but only the wind answered.
"He's gone! Oh God, he really left us!"
The eldest cried, her voice cracking with terror. The youngest stood up, her face pale but determined.
"Dry your tears,"
she said firmly.
"Grab the thread. We're going home."
They followed the white line through the undergrowth, winding it back up as they went, and by evening, they stood at their own door. The stepmother nearly choked with rage when she saw them, but she hid her venom behind a tight, fake smile. 3 days later, the father returned from the woods, expecting an empty house. When he saw his daughters alive, relief washed over him, but he dared not show it, fearing his wife's wrath. Days passed, and the stepmother's hatred grew hotter. She nagged the father relentlessly until he agreed to take them again, this time much farther. She also found their yarn and burned every inch of it. The night before the second journey, The sisters panicked.
What will we do? She took the thread! We'll never find our way back!
We could use grain.
The youngest suggested.
But the birds might eat it. No, we will use ashes. We have plenty from the stove. We'll fill our pockets and scatter them on the path. No bird will eat ash.
The next dawn, they marched into the unknown. The girls scattered handfuls of grey ash behind them. The father, heart-heavy, led them deeper than ever before, into the wildest, blackest heart of the mountains. He walked until his own legs gave out, terrified that even he might not find the way back. Under a massive ancient tree, they stopped. The father waited until his daughters fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. He sat by them, overwhelmed with sorrow, until he drifted off himself. In a dream, he saw a vision, that his youngest daughter would one day bring them happiness, if he could just keep his faith and patience. He woke with a start. Seeing his children still sleeping soundly, he wept bitter tears, blessed them one last time, and turned back into the darkness, abandoning them to fate. But as he left, a terrible storm arose. The wind screamed through the trees, whipping the branches and scattering the light grey ashes into nothingness. When the girls woke, the path was gone.
Ah! The ash! It's gone!
The sisters screamed, clutching each other.
We are lost! Utterly lost!
Panic set in. They ran in circles, tearing their clothes on thorns, screaming for their father. But the forest only echoed their cries. In their fear, the older sisters turned on the youngest.
This is your fault! Your stupid idea with the ashes! Look at you, covered in soot and cinders. You aren't a princess. You are just a dirty Cinderella.
And the name stuck. Cinderella. They wandered for days, deeper into the gloom, until suddenly a rhythmic pounding echoed through the forest floor, growing louder and closer with every beat. The ground shook violently beneath their feet. A shadow fell over them, blotting out the sun. Standing there was a mountain of a man, hideous, towering, with a single giant eye burning in the middle of his forehead, a monstrous warlock. The beast opened his mouth and unleashed a sound that was less a voice and more a landslide.
I have you now!
He bellowed so loud the trees shook, stripping leaves from their branches. Before they could run, he snatched them up with hands like shovels and bound them with rough rope. The two eldest sisters nearly died of fright, wailing and trembling like leaves in a storm. But the youngest, little Cinderella, stayed as quiet as a lamb, not letting a single sound escape her lips. He dragged them behind him like sacks of potatoes to a massive castle that loomed over the valley. He threw them onto the stone floor of the kitchen with a cruel laugh and roared for his wife.
Wife, wake up! It's been 100 years since I tasted human flesh, but tonight we feast. I'm tired from the hunt, so you cook these two big ones for supper. We'll keep the little one to fatten up. Oh, what a roast she will make later, eh, wife?
From the shadows crept a witch, ancient, crooked, and eager.
A fine catch, husband. I haven't roasted young meat in ages. Go sleep, my love. I'll fire up the oven.
The old hag, hideous and trembling with age, hobbled out to fetch wood, barely able to keep her balance. The one-eyed warlock, both of them powerful monsters in their own right, collapsed onto a huge iron bed and instantly began to snore, shaking the walls. The girls, paralyzed with terror, watched the witch work. She grinned, revealing rotten teeth, and stoked the massive oven until the fire roared like a beast. Then, she thrust a long iron poker deep into the flames. Desperate, the eldest sister whispered a plea for mercy, but the hag only cackled, her eyes gleaming with hunger.
Save your breath for screaming, my pretties. Wait here. I need more wood to get a good crisp on your skin.
She hobbled out, leaving the door unlatched. The moment she was gone, Cinderella moved. With savage desperation, she gnawed at the ropes binding her wrists until, with a sharp crack, they gave way. In a heartbeat, she freed her sisters.
Let's run!
The eldest gasped, already scrambling for the door.
No! He will catch us before we reach the trees.
Cinderella hissed, grabbing her arm. Her eyes darted to the glowing, red-hot poker in the fire.
We must fight. Grab the iron. All of us. Together.
Trembling violently, the three sisters gripped the heavy, searing iron. They crept toward the sleeping giant like ghosts. He lay sprawled on his back, his single massive eye shut tight, snoring like thunder. They raised the spike, the heat radiating against their faces.
Now!
With a scream of effort, they drove the burning point straight down. The giant thrashed. A terrible hiss of steam and burning flesh filled the air. He convulsed once, twice, shaking the very foundations of the castle, and then fell still, dead. Just then, the witch hobbled back in, arms full of wood. She saw her dead husband, dropped the logs with a crash, and screeched, lunging for them with clawed hands. But the sisters, fueled by adrenaline and rage, didn't hesitate. They grabbed her by her rags and hair.
Into the fire with you!
They swung her hard, whoosh, straight into the roaring oven and slammed the iron door shut on her screams. Silence fell over the castle. They were safe. They explored the fortress and found it empty of life but full of treasures. Room after room was filled with gold, jewels, and the finest silks, stolen from kings and emperors by the dead Warlock. The sisters immediately claimed the best rooms and the finest dresses. But Cinderella? She got the attic. She got the rags. And soon the fear faded, and the sisters returned to their old ways. They made Cinderella cook, clean, and sweep the ash, mocking her while they preened in stolen mirrors. One day, the sisters grew restless. They climbed the highest tower to look out over the endless forest that was now their kingdom.
Look!
The eldest pointed towards the edge of the garden.
A gate!
And beyond it, a wide road. It must lead somewhere.
They hurried down, unlocked the massive iron gate, and followed the road until they saw a city glittering in the distance. Their hearts leapt. A city meant people, parties, and admirers. They rushed back, dressed themselves in the Warlock's finest stolen silks and jewels, and turned to Cinderella with a sneer.
We are going to the city. Stay here, Cinders. Guard the castle, clean every speck of dust, and don't touch anything. If we find a single cobweb when we return, you'll regret it.
They swept out like peacocks, leaving Cinderella alone in the silent halls. The sisters walked to the city and found it buzzing with excitement. The king was holding a month-long festival to find a wife for his son. The sisters, looking like foreign princesses in their magic clothes, marched right into the palace. The prince welcomed them, dazzled by their finery, and danced with them, though he chose no bride that night. When they returned weeks later, they were flushed with pride and arrogance. They found the castle clean, but that didn't stop them. They scolded Cinderella for imaginary dust and even struck her for laziness, just to remind her of her place.
Oh, if you could have seen it, Cinderella! The music, the dancing. The prince danced with us, of course. But you belong in the ashes.
Cinderella took the blows silently, lowered her head, and swept the floor. But once they left for the second round of parties, eager to outshine everyone again, she was finally free. She wandered through the upper halls, clearing away piles of ancient rubbish the Warlock had hoarded. Her arms ached from the heavy work, carrying debris to the pit outside. But as she swept the last corner of a dusty corridor, something glittered in the grime. 3 golden keys. Her heart pounding, she picked them up. They didn't fit any of the sisters' rooms. She searched high and low until she found a hidden door on the highest floor, painted to look like part of the wall. She tried the first key. Click. The door swung open to reveal a chamber that took her breath away. Rows of dresses hung on golden hooks, gowns woven from sunbeams, moon dust, and starlight, encrusted with gems that sparkled like frozen fire. She stared, awestruck.
Better than anything my sisters have.
She whispered, her fingers trembling as she touched the silk.
They are nothing compared to this.
She tried the second key. It opened a room filled with magnificent suits of armor, weapons, and golden plates fit for a king. The third key revealed piles of gold and silver coins, enough to buy a kingdom. She realized with a jolt that she was now wealthier than any monarch on earth. She thought of her poor father, of the Warlock who stole these treasures, and thanked God for this hidden mercy. She vowed to keep it secret, waiting for the right moment to save her father. From the high tower, she watched the road. When she saw her sisters returning, dusty and tired, she dashed down to the kitchen, hiding her joy behind a mask of soot. She cooked their meal just in time. The sisters ate, rested, and then dressed for the next ball, more arrogant than ever.
Listen closely, Cinderella. We won't be back for a month. Keep this place spotless, or else...
They refused to tell her where they were going, though she asked innocently and swept out the door once more. With the castle empty, Cinderella wasted no time. She washed the soot from her face and unlocked the first room. She chose a dress that shimmered like the dawn, woven from softest pink and silver light. Following the road, she reached the city just as the music began. When she entered the ballroom, the music stopped. The prince stood up, awestruck. He had never seen anyone so radiant. He danced only with her, ignoring all others. But she would not tell him her name, and before the night ended, she vanished like quicksilver. She raced home, changed back into her rags, and was waiting by the hearth when her sisters returned a month later, bubbling with stories.
You should have seen it, Cinderella. A mysterious princess appeared. She outshone everyone. Even the prince had eyes only for her.
Cinderella listened, hiding a smile, and asked innocently for a better dress.
You? Stick to your rags. You aren't even fit to wipe that princess's shoes.
When the second ball came, the sisters left again, eager to see the stranger. Cinderella waited, then unlocked the second room. She donned a gown of deep blue and moonlight and returned to the palace. The prince was enchanted, begging to know her name, but as midnight approached, she vanished like mist. Back at the cottage, she was once again the girl in the ashes when her sisters arrived, exhausted but thrilled by the drama. But the prince was growing desperate. He set a secret guard to watch the gates for the third ball. For the final night, Cinderella wore a dress of blinding gold from the third room. She shone like the sun itself. The prince wouldn't let go of her hand, but as she fled, his guards closed in. She ran, her heart pounding, and in her haste, she lost one of her golden slippers. The prince snatched it up, but the girl was gone. She made it home just in time, changed into her soot-stained rags, and buried her golden dress deep in a hidden bundle under the loose floorboards. When the sisters returned, they found her by the cold hearth.
Still sitting in the ash?
They jeered, kicking a puff of grey dust toward her.
Well, the prince has lost his love for good this time. He has only a shoe.
But back at the palace, the mood was far worse than they knew. The prince was love-struck, pacing the halls, but the king was furious. He called his son to the treasury and threw open the empty vaults.
My son, look around. The vaults are empty. We have spent everything on these endless balls. You throw parties, you dance, but you have no bride.
But father, I love her.
Love doesn't pay the soldiers.
The king snapped, his voice echoing in the hollow room.
We are ruined, for we cannot afford another banquet. We have but one chance left. We will take this slipper, and every woman must try it on. Rich or poor, ugly or fair, whoever fits this shoe shall be your wife, for we cannot afford to search a day longer.
The prince, desperate and humbled, agreed. He traveled from house to house, kneeling before every maiden, but the shoe fit no one. Finally, his search led him deep into the mountains, to the Warlock's castle. The sisters pushed and strained, trying to force their feet into the tiny slipper, but it was hopeless. The prince turned away, defeated. Then he spotted a figure in the shadows, guarding the hearth.
You there,
He said gently.
girl in the rags. Come forward.
The sisters gasped.
Her? Don't waste your time, Your Highness. She's just a servant, a dirty cinder girl.
But Cinderella stepped forward. She slipped her foot into the golden shoe. It fit perfectly, like a key in a lock.
It fits because it is mine.
She said, her voice clear and strong. She pulled the matching slipper from her pocket. The prince looked into her soot-stained face and saw the truth.
It's you.
He whispered, gazing past the soot and grime to recognize the radiant soul beneath.
My love. No mask of ash could ever hide you from me.
Cinderella smiled and led him to the upper chambers. She opened the second room and brought out a magnificent suit of gold and silver armor for him. Then she entered the third room and dressed herself in a gown of blinding radiance. When they emerged, shining like the sun and moon, the sisters fell silent in shock. They could barely look at them for the brightness.
Don't you know me, sisters?
She asked, her voice warm and devoid of the anger they expected.
It's me, your sister, Cinderella.
The sisters wept, partly from shame, partly from relief that she spoke with kindness instead of anger. Cinderella forgave them instantly. And since the prince had brought many noble lords with him to the mountains, two of them, seeing the sisters' beauty and repentance, asked for their hands in marriage. So even they found happiness that day. But Cinderella had one more task. She turned to the prince, taking his hands.
My love, we cannot leave yet. My father is still out there, alone in the woods. He must know that the wicked stepmother is gone.
The sisters' coachman stepped forward, bowing low. He was an older man with kind eyes.
I know where he is, Your Majesty. I served him long ago when he was king. It is not far. I will bring him home.
He took the finest carriage and fresh horses. By evening, he returned. The old king stepped out, grey and broken by years of grief. But when he saw his three daughters alive, well, and dressed in glory, the heavy years seemed to melt away from his face. He embraced Cinderella, tears streaming down his cheeks.
My dream was true. I dreamt my youngest would save us all. If only I held on to hope.
And she had. The wicked stepmother was dead, the warlock was slain, and the kingdom was restored. There was a wedding so grand and loud that they say the cannons were heard to the very ends of the earth. And Cinderella? she reigned long and wisely, proving that a sharp mind and a brave heart are worth more than all the gold in the world.